Hi guys, Mischief here, and welcome back to another true crime. Today's case is going to be on the machete murderer himself, Juan Corona Vallejo. Yes, this isn't going to be an ordinary case. Normally, we can see the victims and what has happened to said victims, but in this case, well, it doesn't work that way. So, let's get on with the case. Juan Corona Vallejo was born February 7th, 1934, in San Antonio de la Moran, Otlan, Jalisco, Mexico. He was one of 10 children born to his father, Sebastian Corona, and mother, Candida Villegas. He also had 3 older siblings from his father's previous relationship. In 1950, when Corona was just 16 years old, he decided to drop out of high school and immigrated to California illegally. Illegally. Where he worked on farmlands in the Imperial and Sacramento valleys. There, he also attended night school so he could gain some fluency in English. In May of 1954, Corona settled in Marysville, Yuba City metropolitan area following his eldest half-brother, Natividad's, invite. Corona was afraid of water. So, when in late December 1955 came a flood in the Yuba and Feather rivers that broke a levee and flooded much of Sacramento Valley, it had killed 38 people, those of which were illegal Mexican workers drafted to fix the levee. Corona suffered a mental breakdown, believing that everyone had died and he was seeing their ghosts. So, on January 17th, 1956, Natividad had Corona committed to a mental hospital in Auburn, California, where he was diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia. Makes sense now, doesn't it, people? Yes. And it all ties in to today's case, unfortunately. He received 23 shock therapies. 23! Over a period of 3 months. That's a lot of shock therapies for only 3 months. It was declared that he was now recovered and got deported back to Mexico. Later in the year, Corona returned to California, but this time legally. Corona was now a trusted farm worker. Even though he had a violent temper, he wanted to show off his masculinity all of the time and had well-known issues of openly homosexual men. Definitely wasn't like today now, was it? Back in the 1950s to 1970s? At least people can openly be homosexual these days, is all I'm saying. So, sorry. Eyelash. Unfortunately for Corona, in March 1970, he had a new schizophrenic episode that landed him being institutionalized once again, but for a short time. Despite all this, Corona worked his way up to being a Labour contractor. You heard me. And this is how he would come to murder. He would house the migrant workers in a barracks-like building on the Sullivan Ranch. Well, the Sullivan Ranch is called the Sullivan Ranch because the owner is obviously Sullivan. All Corona had to do was park his truck on the side of the road where there were men who were willing to work, pick anyone he wanted and lure them in with the promise of a job. These men were, however, unfortunately the kind that wouldn't be missed if they were to go missing. They were elderly alcoholics, social dropouts, and misfits that had criminal records. Corona run these poor men like they were convicts in prison. They all worked for very little pay, and that's because they were pretty much unemployable to normal, everyday jobs. Corona's murder spree lasted around 6 weeks. In 1971, he raped, sodomized, and murdered 25 homosexual men in this time that we know of. And you'll know the reason why later on in the case that we know of. His weapon of choice was usually a knife or machete, giving him the name the Machete Murderer. He would dig graves in a peach orchard ahead of the murders, and we know what that means. It means premeditation. Because all the men were those who weren't to be missed, his plan was to get each one to do a couple days' work, and by the time they were due to be paid, he would murder them. By May 19th, a landowner noticed a large hole dug into the ground. It was roughly 7 feet long and 3.5 feet deep. He wondered what or who could have done this, but dismissed it for now. The next night, however, he wanted to know if it was still there, and lo and behold, the hole was now filled in. He called the police. When they arrived, they dug into the fresh grave. Inside that grave was Kenneth Whitaker, a vagrant who had homosexual pornography in his back pocket. Whitaker had been sexually assaulted, stabbed to death, his head was chopped open, and he had been laid face up with his hand stretched above his head. His shirt was pulled up over his face. Strange, very strange. This, however, marked the downfall of Corona. May 24th, another farmer noticed what appeared to be a freshly dug grave on his land, and police began digging once again. They found Charles Fleming, a known drifter. More and more graves were found in the area, and more bodies of men were found. They all had been sodomized, stabbed, one being shot in the face, and their heads mutilated viciously. All of them were found the exact same way, buried face up, hands above their head, shorts pulled up over their faces, and some of the men even had their lower garments lewdly pulled down. In one grave, the police found the body of Malford Sample, who had a market receipt made out to Juan V. Corona. While the bodies kept coming to light, the police found John Henry Jackson, who had been seen some weeks before riding in the back of Corona's pickup truck. Yeah. Corona was arrested on May 26th. The police searched his home at 768 Richland Road, Yuba City, California. Office and car at this time, and found some evidence. This included an 18-inch machete, a bloodstained club, knives, a pistol with ammunition, digging material, other similar meat receipts found with some of his victims, a blue ledger with 34 male names and dates, and bloody clothing. Also found were bloodstains in Corona's car. It was then the sheriff ordered an aircraft to take infrared photographs of the area to see if there were any more graves, which there were. The police kept digging until June 4th, 1971. And this is why I said that we know of, because the police stopped. They had unearthed a staggering 25 bodies, along with many more receipts with Corona's name on them. It seems he got a little too excited. Just a little bit with the murders, and forgot about all the evidence that went along with the victims in the graves. Unfortunately, 4 of his victims will never be identified. Never. After the trial, because I'm not going to bore you with the whole trial details and retrial, the jurors found Corona guilty of 25 counts of first-degree murder. Like I said, different kind of case. This is where we hear the counts of murder and to whom he had murdered. Count number 1, the murder of Kenneth Whitaker on or about May 19th, 1971. Count 2, the murder of Charles Fleming on or about May 8th to May 11th, 1971. Count 3, the murder of Malford Simple on or about May 21st, 1971. Count 4, the murder of an unidentified male on or about February 25th, 1971 to about May 11th, 1971. Count number 5. Bear with me. The murder of Donald Smith on or about April 30th to May 11th, 1971. Count 6. The murder of John J. Haluka on or about February 25th to May 11th, 1971. Count 7. The murder of an unidentified male on or about 25th of February to 11th of May, 1971. Count 8. The murder of Warren Kelly on or about March 30th to May 11th, 1971. Count 9. The murder of Sigurd E. Pete Bierman on or about February 25th to May 11th, 1971. Count 10. The murder of an unidentified male on or about February 26th to May 12th, 1971. Count 11. The murder of William Emery Camp on or about February 26th to May 12th, 1971. Count 12. The murder of an unidentified male on or about February 26th to May 12th, 1971. Count 13, the murder of Clarence Hocking on or about February 26 to May 12, 1971. Count 14, the murder of James W. Howard on or about May 1st to May 13th, 1971. Count 15, the murder of Jonah R. Smallwood on or about May 12th, 1971. Count 16, the murder of Albert J.T. Riley on or about May 12, 1971. Count 17, the murder of Paul B. Allen on or about May 2nd to May 13, 1971. Count 18, the murder of Edward Martin Cupp on or about May 9th to May 13th, 1971. Count 19, the murder of Albert Hayes on or about February 27th to May 13th, 1971. Count 20, the murder of Raymond Muchash. I'm sorry, I'm not so good with names, okay? I know that I just butchered that completely. On or about May 12th, 1971. Count 21, the murder of John H. Jackson, on or about April 15th to May 14th, 1971. Count 22, the murder of Lloyd Wallace Wenzel, on or about May 14th to May 22nd, 1971. Count 23, the murder of Mark Beverly Shields, on or about April 28th to May 15th, 1971. Count 24, the murder of Sam Bonafide, also known as Joe Karivu, on or about April 21st to May 20th, 1971. And count 25, the murder of Joseph Maxack on or about April 26th to May 21st, 1971. And as we all know, there were 4 unidentified males, but only 25 counts of first-degree murder. All but Whitaker's time of death was speculation, due to not being able to get a true time of death. Hence the reason why I said on or about, because they didn't have the foggiest of when these men had died. Every gravesite and all bodies were found on the Cagero and Sullivan ranches in the Marysville, Yuba City area of Sutter County. Only William Kemp was shot in the head. All other victims were maimed with a sharp object like the knife found at Corona's home and the machete also found at Corona's home. Corona filed for a new trial, which was granted on May 18, 1978. This trial began on February 22, 1982, which lasted several months, and on September 23, 1982, he was again convicted of all 25 murders. Corona was at the correctional training facility, referenced as Soledad State Prison. He was attacked by 4 inmates there. He almost lost his life, and he also lost an eye during the attack. But oh well. He did, however, recover. Typical. In 1992, Corona was transferred from CTF, Correctional Training Facility, to Corcoran State Prison, which is known as California State Prison, where he served the rest of his 25 life sentences in the sensitive needs yard due to having dementia. He was denied parole 8 times during his time in prison, and Corona eventually died on March 4th, 2019, at the age of 85 due to natural causes. And that is the end of this case. It was definitely a different kind of case, like I said at the beginning, as we didn't have all of the information that we usually get during these cases. You know, of how they were actually murdered, where, why, that kind of thing. But I am glad that he was caught quite quickly due to the evidence, the evidence. And that, he was unable to do any more harm to any other men, and the fact that he was never allowed parole is great for the system to have done because, look at what he done. Now, I don't have pictures of all of the men, unfortunately, and a couple of pictures I do have, I couldn't find out who these men were. So if you know who they are, which victim they were, then please let me know in the comments below, because that would be a massive help to me. So I can put a name to the face. Which, yeah, harsh. All of this in just 6 weeks. Man was on a roll. Oh, well, now that that is done, if you like the video, then please like it. It really does help the channel. And I do have other videos that you could check out other than the Machete murderer himself. If you have any comments about this, or like I said, with the pictures, or if you want me to do a certain case, please leave them in the comments below. If you would like to subscribe, then please do subscribe. It is absolutely free. You can unsubscribe anytime, but it's free. And if you like the content, then why not subscribe? And that is that. I will see you beautiful faces in the next one. Bye, guys.